Welcome to CEO Insights. I'm Marilyn de Guzman with investingnews.com. Following the appointment of Gordon Neal as the new president and CEO of Vancouver-based World Copper earlier this year, the company is now shifting its attention to advancing its Zonia copper project in Arizona. Gordon joins me today to give an update on the company's plans for the flagship Zonia property. Hi, Gord.
Hello.
Good to see you again.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So first question, in your recent company update, you've indicated that there's a new paradigm for the copper sector. What do you mean by this?
Well, there are concentrate companies, there are sulfide deposits in the world that are large. The majors are spending billions of dollars to put these into production. The average is probably anywhere between $2 billion to $6 billion, some even $10 billion to put them into production. And the timeline to get them into production is anywhere between 8 to 12 years for permitting. We need copper now. So I think most of us think that we're going to look down market to smaller, more nimble, cheaper, faster to production scenarios, mainly the oxide deposits. 85% of the world's copper deposits are sulfides, 15% are oxides. If you look down market at those smaller deposits, you can get those into production faster, and I think that's the paradigm shift is going to be not looking at such large, expensive, long-term to producing deposits. You have to look down market to the smaller ones like we have at Zonia.
And speaking of Zonia, could you just talk about what makes that a compelling project and why that's your flagship project right now?
Yeah, so Zonia is in Arizona to start. It's the biggest copper producing state in the United States. It produces 71% of all of the United States copper. It's on private land. Zonia is on private land in Arizona. It's been pre-disturbed. It was a past producer, so it's easier to get state licenses to put it back into production. So it's on private land. It's got power on site, which we have to upgrade, but it can be upgraded fairly easily. We've got water on site. That also has to be upgraded, but we can do that as well. The strip ratio, it's been, since the past producer, it's been pre-stripped. So it's 1-to-1 ratio, strip ratio. Getting this back into production, that's what makes it so compelling. It can get into production fairly easily. I've got Derek White, who helped to build the Carlotta SXEW copper mine down the road from us for KGHM when he was the CEO. He is now the head of our technical committee to help me build this. And he tells me you can get this into production in 3 to 4 years. So it's compelling. In fact, we were down there last week. And what we found was there's actually 7 million tons of ore at 0.4% copper that's been stockpiled on the top of the last leach pad. It hasn't been processed. That'll add 50 million pounds of copper to our inventory. We can make $75 million pre-production with that stockpile, which will help us to bridge that working capital gap that normally happens when you start a process, an SXEW oxide production, and by the time you do your first pour. So, compelling. I've got private land, 1-to-1 strip, power, water, and I've got stockpile of ore that can give me pre-production revenue. It doesn't get any better than this.
Right. So run us through sort of the strategy to bring this mine into production, and some of the timelines maybe if you want.
Yeah, so we're going to start with permitting. That's where you have to start first. That's my permitting expert is Myron Smith, who worked with Derek White at Carlotta. He tells me it'll take them 30 months to get this thing permitted. At the same time, we've got scoping studies we have to do. We're going to have to do metallurgical tests. We're going to do bulk on-site metallurgical testing. We're going to be doing some trenching across all the 3 existing leach pads. We have to do a bankable feasibility study. I'll be updating my resource estimate. I'll be doing some infill drilling to do that. So the timeline is really 36 months to 48 months to get it into production, but it will require all of those things I just said to get us smoothly into that transition.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the ore that's right there, what are the plans for that? Does that provide then sort of immediate or more of a short-term cash flow for you?
So at this early days, we've just discovered that this ore that was piled on leach pad number 3 has not been fully processed. So what you have to do is determine how much copper is remaining in it. Then what we would do in the where the southwest pond is now, we would actually turn that into our leach pad, put a leach pad down. This is after we get our permits, which would be 30 months from now. And between that 30 months and let's say the 48 months, the 4 years, we would move that unprocessed ore from existing leach pad number 3, put it on the new leach pad. We would process it and create a pregnant leach solution. Then you could do one of two things. You could bring in portable SXEWs to process that and start producing copper before you even built your SXEW, our new SXEW, or you could turn the pregnant leach solution into a sulfate and truck it down the road to Carlotta, which is an SXEW which Derek White built, and we could produce copper from there. So what I'm basically saying is it looks like we'll have revenue before we even finish building this site.
Yeah. Now you have another project in Chile, Escalona. It's been recently, designated. Well, the government of Chile announced it's part of a sanctuary of nature zone. So, what does this mean as an implication to your project?
What it means is we don't know what it means. They haven't really told us what the sanctuary of nature encompasses. We do believe that it will extend our abilities, it will extend the timeline to get drill permits. So that kind of gives it basically holds it up somewhat. But I just found out that the people who own the rights to the property, Gasco, are looking at us helping them with this nature trust that they have, which means essentially the area around Escalones could actually be designated as a multi-use area inside of the sanctuary of nature. If that's the case, then we actually could drill it and potentially mine it, but we're working through the process of figuring out whether we can get that designation of a multi-use area inside the sanctuary of nature. I'm going down to Santiago in a month's time with the chairman of World Copper, which is Hank Van Elfen. And Hank knows Chile very well because he's the CEO of Wealth Minerals, which has the largest lithium asset in Chile. So he's very comfortable and knowledgeable about working within the government and with these groups at Gasco. So if we can actually get this designated as a multi-use area inside of a sanctuary of nature, we can move that project forward.
So over the next short term, a few months, what are some of the catalysts that investors can look forward to?
Well, we'll be doing a new resource update as a result of bringing in the new technical team who's looking at the last resource and seeing that there is some of that inferred, some of the inferred resource is going to be moved into the M&I. Because we did there's been 74,000 meters of drilling on the Zonia project at 15 meter spacing. The fact that we have 122 million tons in the inferred and 75 million in M&I, most of the modeling and resource people are saying that makes no sense. So we're going to move some of that inferred into the M&I, and then I'll have to do an infill drill program to move the rest of that 122 million tons into M&I. Once I've got that done, I can take all of that, which is 200 million tons of 0.3% copper. I can then put that into a bankable feasibility study with the help of engineers, and we'll have to do mine planning and metallurgy and geotechnical work along the way. But the plan is to start with a resource update to give us more tons on the private lands so that we can move it to a bankable feasibility study and get all our permits on the private land. And permitting the private land in the United States, in Arizona, is much easier than permitting the BLM lands in the United States and Arizona.
Well, thanks, Gord, for joining me today. And
thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Join us again next time for another edition of CEO Insights.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates and interviews. See you next time.